All right, everyone. Well, we're going to go ahead and break it down here. This is going to be my recap for today. MLGO, this thing went up almost 350%. This was incredible. And you know what's funny is that this is one that we got some trades on just the other week. If we look at this daily chart, you'll see it was, I don't know, it was like 10 days ago. It had this day where it went from like $1 a share, whatever this was, all the way here up to a high of $15, which was incredible. It then sold off. It gave back almost all of the gains. It didn't quite fill the gap. For those that are not familiar with that, what that means, there was a gap formed on this day right here when the stock closed the previous day at let's see. Well, let me really zoom in on this and just help you understand what's going on here. So, and by the way, I'm on my traveling trading station, so I'm working on a small USB monitor. But so on this day back here, this was on June 3rd. MLGO closed at $1.56, and then the next day it opens and it surges higher. So we end up having a gap on the daily chart, and we connect the low of that day, the bottom of the candle wick, which is the low, and we actually connect the top of the day before the gap. Not the close, but the top of that candle. So we actually have to move it up to like right around there approximately. So what we end up having on the chart is this large gap. Now what you can see is the gap started to get filled a little bit as the price sold off on these days. So it made the gap a little smaller. Now it's about this big that is still yet to fill. So gap's a little bit smaller, but also although it did pull back quite a bit, it didn't drop all the way down. Now, if you could tell, I'm sitting on the floor on my traveling trading station. To be honest, I actually like sitting on the floor working. This is like a very comfortable way for me to sit. This coffee table is not quite the perfect height, so but beggars can't be choosers. Anyways, my schedule's gotten a little thrown off. The end of well, last week, my wife's uncle passed away, and he was 96 years old. He lived a very nice long life. I had actually missed a day about a week, or I missed half a day about a week ago, so we could go visit him and see how he was doing and everything. And so we had the funeral over the weekend, and it was actually really nice. It was a military send off with the bugle and the folding of the flag because he served in the army in Korea. And funny enough, the fellow who was doing the bugle came up to me after and said, shook my hand and said, "Sorry for your loss. And by the way, I'm in your class and I love it." And I was like, "Oh, are you still holding GameStop?" Anyways, so I was like, "Oh, we should chat after this, but not right now." So that was nice. So if you're listening to this, I appreciated saying hi to you and shaking your hand, and hopefully we'll get to chat again soon. But my schedule's been a little funny uh, here these last few days, and so I'm on my traveling trading station right now, and this morning I knew I wasn't going to be able to trade, which was really unfortunate. Well, I had about 40 minutes, and I sat down at 7 a.m. And at 7 a.m. when I sat down, the scanners were very, very dull. There was nothing that looked good. And to make matters worse, Thinkorswim traders were offline. Thinkorswim traders were not able to execute orders. And I was like, this is crazy because Thinkorswim is such a big brokerage. Like, if they're offline, you have millions of traders who now cannot trade the market. That's going to affect the volume in the market today. I mean, it's going to have a real effect. So at that point, that was maybe 7:15 or 7:30 that I kind of realized what was going on and people were talking about it. I was like, all right, well, you know what? This is ridiculous. Even if something does pop up and looks good, people aren't going to, there's not going to be people buying it because Thinkorswim's offline. So the net result was that we didn't have a lot of volume early this morning. And then I had to run out for a little bit. And so now I was looking at this on my phone. And I saw MLGO popping up. And the name of this company is MicroAlgo. And I remember a few people making a joke about this of like, why am I trying to trade an algo? Like, isn't this going to inherently be like impossible? That is the business name. And it was very difficult a couple weeks ago. So what I'd like to do here is I'd like to break down the price action on MLGO. Now, I got to log into my Thinkorswim account real quick. I just want to check something over there while we do it. I want to look at Bookmap to see the depth of the level two, the market depth more visually. So Bookmap or Thinkorswim is like always like do. It takes forever to get loaded. Drives me crazy. We'll see if I can even get in. I don't know. But while that's loading, so in about half an hour I can, when it's loaded, I'll be able to get in there. Um, let's look back at the scans for this morning. Um, so if I scroll back on the scans, right, NXL is also up about 90% today. So that one we were talking about the other day. Um, this one I was a little skeptical about because of the topping tail candle, as you can see right here from Friday. So another topping tail candle today showing it pushed higher, but sellers were able to pull it back down. So it wasn't able to hold those levels. Um, so NNE, this one, you know what? It's funny. It's up 35% today. This is a recent IPO and it's pushing higher, but it's, as you can see here, it's got a higher float. Now, one of the things that I've talked about before is the fact that these higher float stocks are, oh gosh darn it. Sorry, I'm trying to get logged in here. I can't type and speak at the same time, evidently. So NNE, do you think it's going to be easy to borrow? Well, it's 23 million share float. I would typically think yes, but evidently it's not. It's L for locate. So I can click the locate button. Let's see how much the shares cost to borrow. About 5 cents a share. That's not cheap. So 10,000 shares would cost $492 to borrow. So that's interesting. I wonder, given that it is not easy to borrow, if this will push higher in the coming days. The float being a smidge higher makes me a little skeptical, but anyways, I generally find that at Lightspeed, stocks with floats of over 20 million shares are usually easy to borrow. ALIM, easy to borrow, like that. Stocks with floats of under 20 million, it's not as common, but sometimes you'll see one. And when you do, I'm usually like, better be careful on that. If it's easy to borrow, what that essentially means is that someone can hammer it to the short side immediately, especially if it's not on short sale restriction. So you can get a coordinated bear raid. A lot of these short sellers will do this kind of short and distort stuff. They'll hammer a stock to the bid on the bid, try to bury it, push it down, then throw a big order on the offer, then hit, the bid and then offer, hit and offer, hit and offer. That's what Jim Cramer was talking about when he ran his hedge fund. So it's a common practice. So I try to be careful when something is easy to borrow and is not on short sale restriction. This was a buyout. But anyways, so we didn't have a lot that looked good. And then I don't know if you guys did get some opportunities early this morning on some other stocks that maybe I looked at but missed. But then MLGO ended up being our big mover. So let's see. Looks like Thinkorswim is finally ready for me to attempt to log in. So let's see if it'll grant me access to my account. All right, so it says it's logging in. All right, so MLGO, if we look at the daily, we know we had the 200 moving average up here around 1250 and the 200 SMA up here around 15. So running into those two daily levels, we closed at highs. We pushed a little higher after hours up to 16, and we're back at 13 right now. Price has gotten a little higher, so the spreads are going to get a little bigger. So MLGO, I'm going to pull up Bookmap here. And what I want to do, what I kind of like doing is pulling this up, scrolling back a little, and looking at where we have levels of big buyers and big sellers. So I'm going to just do 6 hours. I found because Thinkorswim runs slowly. It doesn't run very well on my computer. But Bookmap also doesn't run super well on my computer. So rather than running two platforms that don't run well, I just run Thinkorswim and Bookmap goes through it. Anyways, it's a little bit cheaper as well. So this is interesting. So what we see back here is initially the price starts to move up and there's a whole lot of sellers in this area here. And then there's a lot of sellers in here and another wall of sellers here. Kind of pushes higher. And what I'm seeing here are a lot of sellers. Now I do see down in this area some bids and again some bids, which would have been a little bit of support. But those bids faded off. Lots of sellers stacked, stacked, stacked. Lots of sellers stacked here at 850, but all these buyers pushed through it. It pushes higher. Big stack of sellers up there, another stack of buyers. It pushes higher, another stack of sellers, and then it basically has a clean shot up to 12. Not seeing a lot of buyers on the bid, even right now, but definitely sellers unloading up in these areas, but not seeing the same degree of buying support, which is interesting. And yet it clearly went a lot higher. It definitely was strong. So kind of interesting to look back at that market depth and to just see that there were definitely big walls of sellers on the level two. Um, that's very interesting to see. Okay, so I'll move that aside here, put that over there for right now. So MLGO, it looks like initially we looked at it early this morning. I remember around 7, and I was like, okay, like it's up a little bit, but not that much. $4.67, something like that. I think I saw one of our members, Adrian, took a position at like 470, and at that time I remember him saying, "Man, there are a lot of hidden sellers at 470. Like, what is going on with this thing?" Um, and I agreed. I was like, I don't know what to tell you, but you're right. Um, this thing's hard to navigate. I was like, you're right. There are a lot of sellers on it. Anyways, so I don't know what ended up happening with his position, but he was in around 470 full size, and it looks like that was around 7:15. So it was right around here when we were kind of like right at VWAP. So it looks like it dropped down at 7:45. He might have stopped out. Then it comes back up sideways, pops up a little, dips down, topping tail, topping tail, topping tail, pulls up to 5, starts to pull away to 520, then pops up to 540, 560, and then right back down. Longs probably get trapped, they get annoyed, drops back down, gives back that whole gain. Then a slow grind back up, and then flush at the open, drops, pops up, jackknife, back down, rips back up into a halt up, opens higher, dips down, rips back up, dips down, sideways, choppy, choppy, up, back down, sideways, creeping, pulling away right here, goes through the high of day of 640, rips up to 7, pulls back up to 720, pulls back, pops up, and then here we get a push up to a high of, what was it, 760, 780, up to $8. Dumps back down to under 7, goes sideways, under that $8. So in this area, I bet if we pulled up Bookmap, we would see at that time there were big sellers up around 8. So let's see, we had big sellers in this area. Um, let's see if I can, oh, come on. I'm trying to scroll out. You can see how it's like really slow to scroll. So, why is it going so slowly? Okay, so right in this area here, this is 7, and then this was 8. Yeah. So the area that we're talking about is right in here, right in that area. So that was where we had that big seller. Right in here. Okay, it busts through it, it pulls back, comes up a little bit higher. So we see that it busts through it, it pulls back, goes a little higher, up to 8. So wait, this was a seller at 650, then this was the seller here at 8. And then it gives back those gains. And then all of a sudden, 2 in the afternoon, kind of out of nowhere, it pops up right here, pulls back. Now we're right underneath the highs. It punches through a new high at 9, pops up, pulls back, pops up, pulls back, And next thing you know, we're going up to 10, 11, 12, 13, and we're on this strong run into power hour into the close. So all of a sudden we got this burst of momentum right there. We went from going sideways to, back with some real strength. What was interesting was that I was looking at the SEC filings for MLGO, and I didn't see um, anything recent. We had something from June 6, which was relates to the issuance of sale of $30 million aggregate principal amount unsecured convertible promissory notes. Okay, so it's a promissory note with the right to convert it into shares. That's my guess here. That's usually what this would be. Um, so on June 5th, the highest closing price was 12. 96 million based on 8 million shares. Therefore, we're not subject to limitations. Interesting. Interesting. Operates in China. Okay. Interesting again. So we are Cayman Islands. Interesting. Cayman Islands company. Chinese, not a Chinese operating company, but the business primarily operates in China. So see if you can make sense of that. Okay, so now this sort of like fills in some of the blanks here for me of like, it's got no news, but it's up so much. Oh, it's Chinese? Okay. So, all right. Well, the thing that I would be expecting is the possibility that we get news that they're selling shares or doing another convertible note type of unsecured promissory note to raise money with the option to convert those that loan into shares. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see news about that come out soon. It also wouldn't surprise me if that has anything to do with why the stock is up so much today. Although, we'll see whether or not maybe some of you guys saw something that I didn't see, but um, that wouldn't surprise me at all. So in total, you've got a stock here that is up 300%, nearly 235 right now, or 250, without a fresh catalyst. But as we can see from the filings, they do intend to raise money. So if we actually looked at their balance sheet, what we would probably see is that they're in need of raising money. So let's look at Q1 balance sheet here. This is fiscal year 2023. Let's see if this has. We do the consolidated balance sheet. Okay, so let's see, how much do they have for goodwill? Um, yeah. So goodwill here is 106 million. That's always generous. Okay, cash and cash equivalents. Okay, that's not. This is December 20. That's not. Okay. So, oh no, I'm sorry. This is RMB. RMB. Here's US dollars, USD. It's still not an insignificant amount of money by any means. And it looks like they took the goodwill off their balance sheet. So they cleaned up their balance sheet a little bit. So right now, for December 31st, 2023, 44 million in cash, short-term investments, accounts receivable, prepaid, okay. Total current assets, 57 million. Non-current assets, not a lot. Current liabilities, accounts payable, deferred revenue, other payables. It's not a lot. Um, it's honestly not terrible. But let's look here at the operating revenues. So they generated 80 million in 2023. I'd like to be able to compare that with previous years. Hang on, I'm going to open um, go over here for a second. MLGO. Let's see what they have here. revenue. I don't want the per share. I want the total. So revenue 47, 82, 87, 81. Interesting. I think this is in millions. Gross profit margin has fluctuated a lot, um, which is interesting. 19%, 33%, 18%, 24%. But for what's worth, GameStop has been around 28, 29%. So is now GameStop's currently at 24%. Operating income. Okay, so they are losing money. Gross profit or selling. So, the problem here is that they're losing a decent amount of money. Looks like 37 million over the last trailing 12 months. So, although they have cash because they're losing money, they're going to burn through that cash within a year. Probably less than that. So they're going to need to raise money. And the question is, when do they do it? Well, we know from their filings that they're ready to do it. And when the stock has a day where it goes up 300%, that's going to be a decent day to consider raising money. Without looking closely at the terms of the registrations that they have, some of these allow them to sell from time to time, and they don't necessarily make a filing every time they sell some shares. They'll just do a periodic update that over the last X period of time, they've sold this many and raised this much. So since I wasn't trading it today, I couldn't say what the price action was like and if it seemed like there were a lot of big sellers, but based on looking at market depth, which we saw in on Bookmap through Thinkorswim, we could see that there certainly were a lot more sellers, it seemed, than buyers, which is kind of interesting. We know that sometimes, you'll traders get exuberant with the stock squeezing up and they'll just kind of buy into it, even if the technicals don't really make sense or the fundamentals don't really make sense. The technicals are fine, but the fundamentals might not make sense, but people keep buying into it anyways because heck, it's up 300% or 200%. It's the leading gapper. Everyone's focusing on it. And this has 131 million shares of volume. So, the fact is, if the company wanted to sell 10 million shares today on the open market at $10 a share, they probably could have. That would only have been less than 10% of the volume today, and they would have raised 100 million bucks. And then that now buys a couple more years of the company running, where they can try to turn things around and improve their margins and tighten things up. I don't know this company well, so I don't really understand their business model of what they're selling. It's always helpful to get a better understanding of of a company if you're really thinking about holding it for a long time. But for me, I'm a day trader. I'll periodically dig a little deeper and ask a couple questions. When I look at something like this, what I would be concerned about is that there's a possibility tomorrow that we're going to sit down and, depending on how this closes after hours. So right now we're in after hours trading. Let's say this closes, between 12 and 13, 14, whatever, in this area at 8 p.m. tonight. Then let's say tomorrow at 4 a.m. it spikes up to 20 bucks. Then it starts selling off and just begins the descent. So if that happens, then it's probably very light volume traders that punched it higher because it's very thinly traded at that time, not a lot of sell orders out, so they can just bid it up and they jam it up, and next thing you know, it's at $18, $20 a share. But usually they don't sustain that levels. If it kind of slowly holds going into 7 a.m., then we might be like, uh-oh, shorts are going to start to feel the pressure. This thing might push through 18 or 20, and we might be seeing a bigger move between 7 a.m. and 9:30. And the question is, do we feel comfortable trading it knowing that there's a chance that the company is going to drop news that they've raised X amount of money selling X number of shares on the open market over the last 24 hours. That's our risk. So that's why I dig a little deeper on continuation setups, because of the possibility that I could be in it and news comes out. But when we look at this chart, we can see that if we get above 15, 16, 17, and specifically if we get above the high here, sorry, this high was on, let me get rid of that. This high was on, what was the date back here? December 8th. The high was 27.50. If we got above 27.50, we have a window all the way up to $156 a share. So that's when things start to get a little crazy. This has a 1.8 million share float. Did people take some big short positions on this? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. So let's keep a really close eye on how this trades tomorrow. I'm going to be watching it. I'll be trading tomorrow, and I'll see you guys here bright and early. Reminder as always, trading is risky, so manage your risk, take it slow. These will go with or without you. This one went without me. I missed it today, but I'll be back at tomorrow, and hopefully we see some good opportunities. So as always, manage your risk, and I'll see you guys back here in the morning.